Back in October, the SSC Tuatara set the record for the fastest production car in the world at 316 miles an hour. That is crazy fast for a production car. But it got me thinking, what's the top speed any car has gone? Well, it turns out it's over double that, 763 miles an hour. And that record was set, hold on, is that right? 23 years ago? Well, car technology has obviously advanced since then, so why hasn't anyone beaten this record?
Well, I mean, there's no textbook you can go and buy that tells you this is how you design a 1,000 mile per hour car, right?
Well, that's Dr. Ben Evans, and he's part of the team looking to break that record by building a car to hit 850 miles an hour. And 850, that's cool and all, but you know what else is cool? 1,000 miles an hour. But is that even possible? I mean, what does it take to make a car go 1,000 miles an hour? Well, today we're gonna break it all down, and it turns out it's pretty complicated. So let's get into it.
Big thanks to Audible for sponsoring today's episode of Bumper to Bumper. Now, your old Uncle Jerry over here has a lot of free time on his hands, and there's only so much bird watching I can do. I've seen literally all birds. But I heard about this thing called the internet book thingy, and it's called Audible. I found out they have these things called audiobooks where a voice reads me a book through these headphone thingies. It's great. A voice reads to me, okay? What the heck? It's magic. And I've been listening to Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, narrated by Matthew McConaughey. You know, I do a pretty good Matthew McConaughey impression. All right. Nailed it. Now, Audible isn't just limited to literally thousands of audiobooks. Oh, no. They have all sorts of exclusive podcasts, theater performances, and guided wellness programs. So hurry up and try out Audible for yourself. Head on over to audible.com/bumper to bumper or text on your little phone thing, bumper to bumper to 500-500. You get 30-day free trial. Okay, I gotta get back to this audiobook. Take me away, Matthew. Take me away. I'm picturing him with his shirt off right now. You don't know it, but he's naked.
All right, quick physics recap. In order for a car to accelerate, there has to be an imbalance between the force pushing it forward and the resistance trying to slow it down. As long as there's more forward force, the car will continue to accelerate faster and faster until it's met with an equal amount of resistance, at which point it will even out at its top speed. So to help us visualize this, I made a little donut balance. And on this side, this side will represent the forces necessary to drive the car forward. And this side represents the forces creating resistance. Let's say this shot of liquid equals 100 horsepower, about the same as a Mazda 2. Now, on a frictionless surface with zero resistance and a vacuum, you wouldn't need more than 100 horsepower to get to 1,000 miles an hour. But in the real world, that 100 horsepower, it's got to go through a drivetrain, which creates mechanical resistance. It's got to overcome rolling resistance from the tires, and it's got to push back air resistance, pushing back on the car. Now, these forces create resistance on the car, which is why a 100 horsepower Mazda 2 isn't breaking the sound barrier. In fact, it's barely breaking 100 miles an hour. That's a tenth of the speed we need. So to go 10 times faster, why don't we try giving it 10 times more power? So now we're at 1,000 horsepower. 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 miles an hour. Bing, bang, boom, we got it. Well, it turns out that it's not that easy. An actual 1,000 horsepower car like the Bugatti Veyron, it only reaches about 250 miles an hour. And one of the main reasons is more air resistance. The faster you go, the more it stacks up. Now let's actually look at the equation for determining air resistance. It includes the density of the fluid, which is just our atmosphere, the velocity of the object, that's how fast it's going, the coefficient of drag, which is just a measurement of how well the shape of an object can move through a fluid, and the cross-sectional area. But really the most important thing is this little 2 right up here. Because the velocity is squared, it means that an increase in speed results in a quadratic increase in air resistance. meaning that if you double your speed, the drag force, it doesn't double, oh no, it quadruples. So we have a few ways in which we can combat this. We can keep increasing the power, or we can reduce the drag. Well, sometimes reducing drag isn't an option because it can be the only thing keeping the car on the ground. Passenger cars naturally have a shape that generates lift. Look at the cross-section of an airplane wing and look at a car. They look pretty similar. Now, if we didn't do anything to combat the lift, then a car like a Mercedes A-Class with the lowest coefficient of drag for a production car, going about 250 miles an hour, would generate enough lift to counter 98.3% of its own weight. The car would be the equivalent of 55 pounds. Now, a bump in the road or a slight breeze would be enough to knock the car off course, and the steering, well, it would be almost useless as front tires would have no traction. So to combat this, we need to add some downforce, but that downforce inherently creates drag. So reducing drag is pretty much out of the question for now. Our only option is to increase power.
More power, but
So if this is equivalent to 100 horsepower, then this is equivalent to 10,000 horsepower, about the same horsepower that's in a top fuel dragster. And these drag racers can hit 300 miles an hour in under 4 seconds, but dragsters like this only run a quarter mile at a time. But what if we just say we just let one of them keep going? Could it reach our goal of 1,000 miles an hour? What do you think? No, they can't. And the easiest way to explain why this is because dragsters are built so specifically for one task that they can barely survive just one run that they do. Their clutches, literally, they last one run, during which they weld themselves together from friction. So if we wanted a dragster to keep going, you're gonna need more cooling, you need more fuel, you need a bigger transmission, you need beefier engine internals, and all of that means you have more weight. More weight means we need more power, which means more fuel. And to have that more power, we need to cool all that, which means more weight. It's a snake eating its own tail. I love my tail. My tail's so good. And we haven't even gotten into the mechanical limitations. So let's look at the Veyron, for instance. Now forget wind resistance, forget rolling resistance, forget parasitic losses and all that jazz. It can still only go as fast as its engine can spin. So say we want the Veyron to reach 500 miles an hour with its current rev limit of 6,600 RPM. We could, on paper, do that. And in fact, we did the math. We would need the last gear ratio in the transmission to be 0.42, which would be something around like 15th gear if we had to step it all the way up. Or it would need 53-inch wheels, which would be a pretty baller way to solve this physics problem. And while that works on paper, it doesn't account for parasitic losses, component strength, and the added unsprung weight of the wheels. Not to mention, the engine would need way more torque to turn a system that big. Now, land speed record cars have come up with a solution for all this, but it isn't more torque, it's no torque. No torque.
As soon as we hit kind of 400-ish, that sort of region, 400 miles an hour or so, that's when the switch had to happen to thrust-driven engines, thrust-driven vehicles.
Now this is Dr. Ben Evans, aerodynamicist on the Bloodhound LSR land speed record project, the current car going for the record.
And it just becomes the more natural way of propelling yourself forward once you're at these sorts of speeds.
Now what he's talking about is rocket and jet powered cars. With these, there's no torque measured because nothing is turning. Instead, we have pounds of thrust pushing us forward. How much thrust? Well, the land speed record holder from the 1970s reached 622 miles per hour using a rocket engine making 22,500 pounds of thrust, which in liquid horse juice terms is about this much. Mazda 2, 1970s land speed record holder. Now this is about 58,000 horsepower. Now the car was called the Blue Flame and it held the official land speed record for 13 years, which actually brings me to the next problem in this equation, and that's the record itself. The land speed record is an official FIA world record, and to hold it, you can't just reach the top speed. Oh no, You gotta stay there. And the record is for a flying mile, which means that the speed is the average taken over a whole mile and then is averaged against another run in the opposite direction within the same hour. Now, the Blue Flame was like a bottle rocket. It relied on its light weight and burst of thrust for its speed. Now, that design only gets us so far because after 650 miles an hour, air pressure begins to increase as we enter a space called the transonic regime. No, I'm not talking about Jared Leto's cult. Although Jared Leto hit me up, I'll be part of your cult.
Essentially, the transonic regime is as soon as there's airflow around the vehicle that's traveling faster than the speed of sound. And that happens before the vehicle itself gets to the speed of sound. And that's when drag really starts to build up around the vehicle.
So basically, as an object approaches the sound barrier, the air begins to stack up on the nose of the object like a pile of pancakes that are harder to push through than your normal air. And once you break that sound barrier, object pokes through that pancake and they break apart, just like this analogy, and you create a sonic boom. At least that's how it works in the air. On land, that sonic boom hits the ground you're running on.
The fact that you're giving that spray momentum leads to a drag turn. And in kind of high-speed motorboats, they refer to this drag as spray drag. And it's a similar phenomena for us. So we've termed this additional drag, which normally as an aerodynamicist you don't need to account for, as spray drag.
So you can see why it'd be a lot harder to break the sound barrier on land than in the sky. And it wasn't until 1997, 50 years after Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in the Bell X1, that the sound barrier was just barely broken on land by the Thrust SSC. All the components and power needed meant that this super sleek looking plane with wheels weighed 10 tons and made the equivalent of 100,000 horsepower. 1,000 times more power than our little Mazda 2, just to get a pinky toe across the sound barrier for just a second and a record speed average of 763 miles an hour. We're not even close to hitting 1,000 miles per hour. So how much more do we need to get there? Well, this is where Dr. Evans and the team building the Bloodhound LSR come into play. Now, it's the current contender for the land speed record, and it's scheduled to make its run soon in the Hoxene Pan of South Africa. Now, the Hoxene Pan is a dry lake bed so flat that you can see the curvature of the earth. Over a 10-mile stretch, the elevation changes by only 300 millimeters. And it's even flatter now because the Bloodhound team removed 16,000 tons of stones by hand. Now, with the equivalent of 135,000 horsepower or 10 of these gallon jugs, Bloodhound has already made it to 628 miles per hour in test runs, and it's gonna go a lot faster. So yes, Bloodhound in theory could go 1,000 miles an hour. It's got the thrust, it's got the drag coefficient, it's got the crazy team behind it, but there's still some holes in this equation that you just can't slap a Mo Power Baby sticker over. And we've talked about G-forces and their effect on the body in previous episodes, but the main thing you need to know is that sustained G-force is way worse for the body than instantaneous G-force. In a crash, you might experience 8 G or more for a second, but in a land speed record attempt, if you wanted to maximize your use of the space, the driver would experience sustained G from the moment of launch all the way up to the moment they pull the parachute. And then there'd be more sustained G as the car decelerates to a stop.
In principle, I mean, the only way you can overcome that barrier of fundamentally how much distance do you have is accelerate quicker, decelerate quicker. But then you move into the realms of what can the human body sustain. And of course, fighter jets and so on will experience G loading of much higher than 3G, but that's for a relatively short amount of time.
So Bloodhound might be accelerating as fast as a car can safely accelerate, and if it doesn't have the space to reach its top speed, they've got to find a new spot. Literally, the land speed record is determined by the Earth. That's the limiting factor.
The initial goal when we set out on all of this over a decade ago, the design brief was, what does a 1,000 mile per hour car look like? We still don't know in reality if that is possible, but we believe in principle Bloodhound has the potential to go at that sort of speed.
But will it? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I'm sure that the Bloodhound team, they're gonna get close to it. I really hope they do. Big thanks to Dr. Ben Evans for taking the time to speak with us. Maybe we'll put up an extended cut of that interview for all of our Donut Underground followers. By the way, if you're interested in where we got our liquid horse juice, I followed a horse around for a long time. Until next week, bye for now.